Let's move on now to Pakistan's economic crisis. Pakistan has plunged into darkness quite literally yesterday when a failure of the electricity grid led to a blackout in several areas, with power restored after over 12 hours in some areas on Monday evening. But this was in most of the mega cities. Many of the other places continue to grapple with long power outages. Pakistan is running out of money to pay for both power and food. Let me now go across to senior journalist from Pakistan, Imtiaz Alam, who's joining us here on NDTV at the moment. Mr. Alam, many thanks for speaking with us. First of all, sir, what's the situation like today?
It has been very grave. Country was found in darkness, and it was basically a mechanism used to save energy, which turned out to be a disaster. And now the electricity has been restored. It is because of the technical fault. And when power stations are shut down, they take time to start producing electricity. So it has nothing to do with the oil shortages. They have 3 to 4 weeks of diesel and petrol and other sources such as coal and atomic energy. So I don't think this is it happened last year as well in these months. So there is some kind of technical flaw which ran from south to north, and then it was restored from north to south.
Mr. Imtiaz Alam, also I want to understand from you, what is the food inflation like looking at the moment? We understand that the prices of wheat flour had gone up sharply. People were struggling to get that. How is the situation looking on the ground right now? Pakistan is seeking loans from friendly nations as well.
The inflation of the consumer items or essential commodities has gone up beyond 25%. In some cases, it is above 30%. So life has become very miserable for common people and even fixed income groups, middle classes generally. And now we are negotiating a deal finally with IMF. The negotiations have started this evening, and they have put up very tough conditions, which will drive inflation up to 35%. And the government was in a dilemma whether to go for this bitter pill of IMF by raising petrol prices, by raising electricity prices, by raising gas prices, which will trigger overall inflation. So the government was in dilemma because this government has to go to elections in the next few months. So they could not afford to take such effort. So that's why they were hesitant. They wasted 3 months to get some kind of a lenient or a compromised IMF deal, a favorable deal. But the IMF is being very tough on Pakistan because of its.
All right, Mr. Imtiaz Alam, many thanks for speaking with us from Pakistan and helping us understand the ground situation there. Let me now go across to former Indian envoy to Pakistan, Sharat Sabharwal. Sir, many thanks for speaking with us. Is this failure that we are seeing in Pakistan of the economic mess that has been created a failure of the political class, or is it a doing of what we are seeing across the globe, the global crisis because of the Ukraine war and also the floods in Pakistan last year?
No, look, global factors have contributed, commodity prices rising due to the Ukraine war. And then, of course, the devastating floods of last year, for which they went through the UN and some monies have been pledged, but mainly loans. We'll see when those come in. All that has contributed to make the crisis more serious. But the basic fact is that right from its inception, Pakistan has lived far beyond its means. First of all, it decided to have an adversarial attitude towards a much bigger and better endowed India. That has meant heavy defense budgets, which at times in Pakistan's history have gone to 6-7% of Pakistan's GDP. Even now that expenditure is high, around 3%, and much of it is hidden. 3% is declared defense expenditure, much of it is hidden. But there are also some structural problems. Very low resource mobilization. Their tax mobilization is only about 8 to 9% of GDP. Their saving rates are low. So they have traditionally depended upon loans and grants from other countries. During the Cold War years, a lot of money used to come from the United States and help them in bridging that gap. That has dried up. So all these factors have added up to lead them to the current situation. And then one more point, if I may add, they have entered into multiple IMF programs since the beginning. And none of those programs was completed by Pakistan, either because Pakistan failed to fulfill the conditions imposed by the IMF, or IMF pulled out of it because Pakistan was not fulfilling those conditions. The latest extended fund facility with IMF is blocked at the moment precisely because Pakistan is not fulfilling some conditions demanded by the IMF. And that also because of a difficult political situation. Pakistan Democratic Movement and Shahbaz Sharif's PMLN faces some very difficult elections later this year to Punjab Assembly, to legislative, federal legislature, against a very popular Imran Khan. So they are reluctant to take some steps to fulfill IMF conditions, which would make them even more unpopular. So all this has added to a very serious crisis at the moment. Let me also say that what is happening today, the problems Pakistan has today, are the same that I saw when 27 years ago I went on my first posting to Pakistan as the Deputy High Commissioner. Now that tells you that these are structural problems which haven't been taken care of over the years. All those problems continue. Tax concessions to the elite, to the landlords, to army businesses, luxury imports and so on. In that kind of situation, how can you have a sound economy? It's hand-to-mouth existence.
But sir, Pakistan had unilaterally stopped trade with India after the abrogation of Article 370. Could they have got food items cheaper and faster from India had they not done so? In hindsight, was it a bad decision for Pakistan?
Well, that was a self-goal. Imran Khan didn't have any effective answer to India's move to abrogate Article 370. So therefore, he took some steps, and amongst them suspending trade with India, which I would say, as I said, it was a self-goal. Because Pakistan's economy benefits from trade with India. A lot of imports, in terms of machinery and other items are needed from India. And when you do not have direct trade links, either they get them from further afield at high freight rates and higher import time, or Indian goods go to Pakistan through orders placed in third countries. That's been the history, with Pakistan-India trade, because Pakistan has followed a restrictive trade regime. Much of India's trade exports to Pakistan have been going through third countries, orders placed there with a price markup which hurts the Pakistani economy. And then, of course, as you rightly said, vegetables, when they had tremendous shortage during floods time, it made sense to import vegetables from India. But now, because of the fractious political atmosphere, I don't think Shahbaz Sharif has any room for maneuver, even if he wanted to open trade to do so. So all that also adds up. And I can tell you, when I was High Commissioner, I saw studies done by top Pakistani economists, one commissioned by their own planning commission, which said that open trade with India would increase their growth rate by 1 to 2%, that it would be beneficial for Pakistan. And yet they are unable to do so. So that tells you that it's a completely irrational sort of system that is operating, both in terms of internal orientation, not being able to take care of structural problems, and external orientation. This hostile attitude towards a much bigger neighbor imposes unbearable burdens on the Pakistani economy and not having trade.
Sharat Sabharwal, many thanks for speaking with NDTV on that critical subject.